L'Oréal is an international company. We have more than 35 international brands. So you might know we have brands just such as L'Oréal Paris, Garnier, but also luxury brands at Lancôme. So very different brands. So we have the profound conviction as a company that a company's role is not just business. The business of business is not just business. Today, that was the thinking of the 80s, 90s. Today, a company has a responsibility and a role to play to have a positive contribution to society. Our role is also to transform our own business in a way that makes it sustainable, and in the sense of planetary boundaries, respect the planetary boundaries, but also that we have to have a positive contribution to society. And that is the reason why we have a foundation, why we have a charitable endowment fund to support women, why we have impact investing activities to restore ecosystems, because we think that a company has a role to play. So L'Oréal is a company that has a very strong science activity. We have been founded by a scientist. We have almost 4,000 researchers in our team. And so already 23 years ago, we became aware that women scientists are not visible. And women scientists are not visible. They do not receive awards. They do not receive prizes. Just now the Nobel Prize came out. No women in Natural Science Award has received a Natural Science Nobel Prize. So we see very clearly that there is inequality existing, that there are not the same opportunities for women, that there is not the same career path for women, and that is not good for society. It is not good because we need, all talents. The challenges the world is facing are so important. We clearly need all talents. Secondly, science is better when there are different perspectives. That is also very clear. So I do think what we wanted to do from the beginning, from the start, was making women scientists visible, build role models, partnership with UNESCO, a really, really huge program that has now awarded since the beginning more than 3,000 women laureates, women who did her thesis or postdoc. We are also working with young girls in order to involve them in science. So it has become a huge program because unfortunately the numbers are not evolving fast enough. Yeah, well, I think there are two different levels of impact. So you have, of course, a level of impact which is an individual impact on every woman's lives. So 3,000 women whose trajectory has been changed a little bit because the award is allowing them to talk about their science, about what they are doing. The award allows them also to have other activities, to pursue their activities, to talk to young girls, to become a role model. Part of our award is to be made visible. So all this, of course, changes the personal trajectory of a woman. The second element is more collective on a societal basis. Every year we are making a communication campaign in airports around the world to make these women visible. We make them speak to journalists all around the world so that the world sees what these women bring to science and bring to society. And so there are these two levels of impact for each and every woman who has received an award or a fellowship, but also, of course, the maturity on a societal level that we hope is progressing. And when you look, for example, for a long time, children, when you have asked them draw a scientist, they have always drawn a man. And now, I think in the last study, there were around 30% who drawn a woman scientist. So mentalities are changing. And there's still a long way to go. We know that when we look at the world altogether, there are around 33% of women in research careers, but it is progressing. Yeah. No, so I think we have to stay humble and realistic. So we cannot change the fact that research careers have been not an attractive career path in Africa for a long time. We cannot play a role in the lack of research facilities. But what we can do is contribute to this awareness that is upcoming in a lot of countries, that research and innovation are essential for the future of Africa. They are essential to respond to the challenges the continent are facing. And what is needed is an African research done by African scientists for Africa in Africa. And so I think this awareness is becoming more and more important, and I hope that we can have a small, humble contribution. No, we do have research centers for ourselves. Yes, we do have a research center in South Africa, but we are not talking about this, about research for our activities. I talk about research that will allow to find responses to food insecurity, to water scarcity, to climate adaptation. This kind of research has to happen by African researchers in Africa, for Africa, I think. So, as I told you, we have a research center in South Africa. We have in each geographical region in order to adapt to our consumers' needs, research activities, a hub, well, we call it a hub, so that is existing. We are, and I saw at the responses that is already done. Yeah, well, Rwanda has an incredible path in promoting women equality and gender equality. So when we look at political representation, when we look at how the role and the awareness about gender equality has changed, so it's of course an ideal place to bring for women in science, but also all the awareness around the importance of digital innovation, of digital transformation on research and technology. All these are important elements, and of course also because of the very the hospitality that makes it very attractive for us to organize it here. So we have always an event, so this is an event that is going to take place here in Kigali, where we will not only award the 20 fellows of this year, but also of last year. Because of COVID, we couldn't organize a ceremony last year. And before that event, the women will receive a 4 days training program where there are soft skills that are useful in order to break the glass ceiling. Because yes, it is important to be a great researcher, but you have also to be able to be a good negotiator, a manager, communication person, in order to be able to bring your career forward and to be heard and to make your voice and your research heard. And so we train them during 4 days. We also organize a lot of media interviews to make their work visible around the world, because this is part of what we can bring to them, but also what we can bring to the world in creating role models and aspirations. L'Oréal had the first generation of sustainability targets. So what is important, I think, to understand is that we all worked in an economic system that thought there are infinite resources, then there is infinite consumption and infinite waste. And now we become aware of the fact that this is not the case. There are not infinite resources. There is climate change, there is biodiversity loss, there is water scarcity. So we have to change our economic system, and we have to change altogether our business models. So L'Oréal is working on that for the last 10 years. But now we are taking it to another level, and we committed that in 2030 all our activities will be aligned with the planetary boundaries. So the planetary boundaries is a scientifically determined limits to what we can do to the environment. So let me say it in easy terms. Imagine everybody has a part of the cake, and you cannot eat more than your part of the cake, because if you do, you destroy the environment, you destroy biodiversity. So what we are all together doing now is we live over these planetary boundaries. And our responsibility as countries, as cities, as companies is to evolve within these planetary boundaries. So we have targets that will allow us to be within the planetary boundaries in 2030. So what is necessary to do so is we will reduce our carbon emissions to a point that already in 2025 all our sites, production sites, factories, distribution centers, research labs, everything will be carbon neutral. No carbon emission coming from our sites. In 2030, we will just use recycled plastic, no virgin plastic anymore. We will, so a lot of targets, concrete targets that will allow us to align all our activities with these planetary boundaries. So I think, well, first of all, I'm in charge of as I told you, about the sustainable transformation and about all our contribution to society. But I'll still answer a little bit to a question, even if I'm not a business person. So my question is, a lot of elements are the drive for excellence, our capacity, of course, our choices of how we organize our business streams, the choices, but I think the business choices, but part of our culture is the drive for excellence, to seize what starts, to always be questioning ourselves, to always want to do better. So I think a lot of elements of this incredible success are related to L'Oréal's culture. So I do think, so first of all, I do think we all have to change. So I think, yes, of course companies have played a role in this, like our whole economic system, like every consumer, like me as a consumer, as a citizen. We all evolved in that system. So now we all have to change it. Companies have a responsibility. They have a role to play. So L'Oréal has understood that quite early. We have started with our first environmental targets in 2009. So we have reduced our carbon emission already by 81% since 2005 until 2020, even if our production went up. So we decoupled our growth from our carbon emissions. So yes, of course, cosmetic industry has an impact. Of course, everyone has an impact. So we all together have to evolve towards a new economic system, towards circular economy, towards a different way of doing, of thinking, of developing products. You know, since 7 years, each and every product at L'Oréal is evaluated on its environmental footprint. And each and every product has to improve its environmental footprint. So that is a huge commitment, and it was a commitment because we understand that we have a responsibility. So I think there are many companies today, especially in the cosmetic industry, that are aware and that they are taking their responsibility. Unfortunately, there are still companies, like individuals, like countries, who are not doing that. So what is really necessary is to find ways of cooperating all together in order to make the changes that are necessary happen very fast, because we have not a lot of time left to do so. I do think people see that the cosmetic industry, and especially L'Oréal, have done a lot of things in order to live up to the challenges we face. So, you know, we have developed innovations such as solid cosmetics, new form of packaging out of paper with few plastic, recharges and refill, all things that help to reduce the environmental footprint. So I think it is very clear that people will judge us on this, and we hope to do, because we really try to do what is necessary to go in the right direction. I think, first of all, and I think that I say that to all young women who might listen, what is important is we all have to find a place where our talents, our personality, our capacities can contribute to the success of the company or of the organization, a place where you can thrive. So not every environment, not all environments are the right place for everybody. I am really very, very much in harmony with L'Oreal, because I have this drive for excellence. I like when it's going fast. I like to be perseverant, to drive change, to be listening to society, to seize what starts, to always improve. That is very much L'Oreal culture. So I'm very, very happy in that environment. I think to do the job that I do around sustainability, around, that's also not always everything does not please everybody, of course. So I think there is, you have to continue to doubt, but you have to be courageous. So doubt cannot paralyze you. Doubt has to bring you to more excellence. And at one point, especially what concerns sustainability, there are not perfect solutions for the moment. We don't know, each and every innovation is not going to work. Each and everything we try is not going to work. So at a point you need to have the courage to do it. And you have to take responsibility. So I think in leadership positions, it's about courage, about being able to take responsibility, about perseverance, and a lot about listening and cooperation. And I have the immense privilege of doing that in my job. So I'm coming from the NGO sector. I studied law, I specialized on human rights law, I worked in human rights organizations, I worked for public authority, I worked for different organizations. Exactly, I had a consultancy, so many different roles, but always concentrated around one thing: how can I contribute to make this a little bit a better place? And so this is what brings satisfaction to me, what allows me to be happy and fulfilled in my life, and I have found a place where I can do it, where I have the resources to do so. No, because in the beginning I thought, is that going to work out? Am I going to be comfortable in a big company, international company, making business, coming from the NGO sector? And actually I found out that I was never more useful anywhere than I'm at L'Oreal, because L'Oreal wants to lead the change, needed somebody to lead the change, and so I have the possibility to do what I always wanted to do without a lot of obstacles. So yes, of course I asked myself the question, but I found my answer after having worked some time for L'Oreal, that this is definitely the place where I can have the biggest impact. Strange if I wouldn't, no? So yes, of course, I'm very happy to be where I am. I have possibilities. I can influence. I cannot just influence my company, but we also work with our suppliers. We work with competitors, with the whole industry. So there's a lot of NGOs. So yes, it is extremely rewarding, satisfying, and honoring to do what I'm doing, because very often I have the impression that I can really contribute positively. So I think the most challenging part of it is, like for all mothers, is to be the mother I want to be, and to be the professional I want to be. So to have two jobs where you have to have excellence in execution, because the children grow, so you do not get a second chance, and in the same in your job. So I think the difficulty is to do both things very well, and that is what I want to do. And so that sometimes, of course, makes a day complicated, because you have a long work day, but at the same time, your children have to go to this place, or they have that homework and you have to support them, or you have to go to see a teacher. So yes, of course, that's a challenge, like for everybody. But I think personally, well, it's worth it, yeah. I was a very, very evening person until having children, and now I'm a very, very morning person. I do a lot of sports. And well, if I could do everything I would love to do, but I do almost 4 to 5 times a week I do sports, because that's necessary to keep the performance level also, because it's a little bit like a marathon. So you have to be healthy, and you have to be focused. So I try to do a lot of sports, and then a lot of reading, and unfortunately not as much theater as I would like to, but you know, I have still some time, I hope, in front of me that will allow me to go to theater. Yeah. Favorite music? Well, yes, I do. I'm very R&B person of the 80s and 90s. And since I have my children, I haven't seen any other movie at the cinema than children's movies, so I cannot talk about movies anymore. I think, well, first of all, I have met a lot of girls and young women who incredibly inspired me by their strengths, by their perseverance, by their courage, by their will to succeed. Before giving any advice, I would already like to thank them, because of course it's these young women who also inspire the L'Oréal Foundation to continue the work. I think what is very important is, I think all the things I said about perseverance and doubt, but still acting and so on. But I think the most important lesson I learned is that you have to discuss with other women, because as long as you do not talk, you think it's personal, you know. A very long time, you know, I had doubts about my capacities, about my role, about will I succeed, will I not succeed, the obstacles that I meet, are they related to my person? And then I found out actually all the women who have a power position have the same experience, meet the same obstacles, have the same doubts, you know. And so I think that networking, discussing, being open, sharing is incredibly empowering with your peers. So I think this is really important. Do share, because what you experience, what you go through, what you live, it's an experience of being a woman in a society that is not yet completely gender equal. And so you should not always ask yourself, is this my fault? But being clear about what is your responsibility, what is the other person's responsibility, and what is society's responsibility. And that is a very, very important distinction that makes life much more easy. Each story is personal, you know, each suffering is personal, each doubt is personal. So what I would say is, well, I do think that social media has a good role also to play, you know. A lot of social progress, women's rights, minority rights, a lot of these issues have progressed through social media. I think that is really important, because on social media you also learn that it's not just your experience, discrimination for example, but that there are many people who are discriminated who experience the same thing, and then you feel less lonely. So it has also a positive role. Played a positive role. I think what we all learned perhaps also with COVID is that nothing can replace personal relationship. Nothing can replace contact. The feeling of meeting a person, so I do think, unfortunately, life is not that easy, but being confident in that what you want and what you aim for is legitimate, might make it easier. But what I would say is always try to get advice and talk to people, because solution and getting out of loneliness also comes, of course, by discussion.